The story the financial industry tells about age and wealth building goes something like this. The earlier you start, the better. Every year of delay compounds against you. By 50, the window is narrowing, and the best you can hope for is damage control, maximizing what you have, minimizing what you spend, and quietly accepting that the trajectory you are on is more or less the trajectory you will finish on. This story is told so consistently, in so many contexts, by so many people with financial credentials, that it has become the ambient background noise of financial life for anyone over 50. And it is wrong. Not in the emotional sense of being discouraging or unhelpful, though it is both of those things. It is wrong in a specific, demonstrable, and financially measurable way that most people in their 50s have never examined, because no one ever gave them the conceptual tools to examine it. My name is Richard Harlow, and what I want to do over the course of this conversation is make the case, not the inspirational case, the analytical case, that people over 50 are not, as the standard narrative implies, at a disadvantage in building serious wealth. They are at an advantage, a specific, structural, replicable advantage that results from the combination of circumstances that being over 50 creates, and that a 30-year-old with better investment returns or a longer time horizon cannot fully replicate regardless of how talented or disciplined they are. I want to be clear about what I mean by the word advantage, because it matters. I do not mean that everything about being over 50 is financially favorable. Obviously, some things are not. I mean something more precise, that there are specific variables in the wealth-building equation that are systematically better for people over 50 than for people in their 30s, and that these variables are undervalued in the standard financial narrative, because the standard narrative is organized around time horizon as the dominant variable. When you expand the analysis beyond time horizon, the picture looks fundamentally different. The first advantage, and the one that produces the most consistent impact on financial outcomes in my experience, is what I think of as the clarity advantage. At 50, most people know what they actually want. This sounds like a psychological observation, not a financial one. But in practice, it is one of the most powerful financial forces I observe. At 30, a significant portion of the money that flows through a person's financial life goes toward discovering what they value, trying things, acquiring things, experiencing things, and then frequently discovering that those things were not what they thought they needed. This process of discovery is not wasteful in a personal sense. It is how people develop genuine preferences. But financially, it is expensive. The furniture, the vacations, the vehicles, the lifestyle experiments, the hobbies that were abandoned, the social spending required to participate in a peer group whose values turned out not to match one's own. All of this represents capital that was deployed in search of an answer that, by 50, most people already have. A person at 53 who knows what they want from their remaining decades, who has lived enough life to understand what genuinely produces well-being and what merely produces its appearance, makes completely different financial decisions than a person at 30 who is still in the discovery phase. The 53-year-old does not need to spend on discovery because discovery has already happened. Every dollar that is not spent on the approximation of the life they thought they wanted is a dollar available to build the financial structure that will support the life they actually want. This is a structural financial advantage. It does not show up in a compound interest calculator. It shows up in the effective savings rate of someone who has stopped spending money finding out who they are. The second advantage is what I call the elimination advantage. By 50, a person who has lived a financially active adult life has already made most of the expensive mistakes that financial life generates, and has, in the vast majority of cases, survived them and learned from them. The bad investment decisions, the debt accumulated in difficult periods, the insurance products purchased without comparison, the career choices that reduced income temporarily, the financial relationships that created complications. These have already happened, and their costs have already been absorbed. What remains for most people over 50 is a financial life that has been de-risked by experience in ways that cannot be replicated artificially. A 30-year-old who has read every personal finance book ever written still does not have the knowledge that comes from having actually navigated a market downturn with money at stake, or having carried debt through a period of income reduction, or having watched a financial product perform differently from how it was explained at the point of sale. That knowledge, practical, visceral, experiential, changes decision-making in ways that genuinely improve financial outcomes. It is an asset that compounds over time, and that is, at 50, available in full. I want to illustrate these two advantages through the experience of a man named Norman. Norman was 54 when he came to see me, a certified public accountant with a practice of his own, a solid income, and what he described with characteristic precision as a growing unease about whether he had done enough with the resources available to him over the prior 2 decades. He had not, in his estimate, made dramatic financial mistakes. He had also not, by his own admission, maximized his opportunities. He was arriving at 54 with the nagging feeling that the window for serious wealth accumulation had mostly closed without his full participation in it. What the analysis of Norman's situation revealed was not a story of missed opportunity, but a story of misidentified position. Yes, he had not maximized his 20s and 30s, but Norman at 54 had 3 things that Norman at 34 had not had in anything like their current form. The first was income that had reached its full professional maturity. His accounting practice generated revenue that his 34-year-old self could not have commanded, and that, directed strategically, represented a capital formation rate meaningfully higher than anything his younger self had been capable of. The second was a set of preferences so clearly defined by lived experience that the noise-to-signal ratio in his spending had dropped dramatically. He knew, with a confidence unavailable to younger people, exactly what he was spending money on, and exactly which of those expenditures were producing genuine return in life quality, versus which were simply inertial. The third was a professional expertise, 3 decades of accounting practice that had market value in forms he had never fully explored. Advisory relationships, board positions, consulting engagements that his institutional knowledge made him uniquely suited to provide, and that could generate meaningful supplemental income without requiring anything resembling a second full-time commitment. What Norman and I built together over the following 1.5 years was not a recovery plan. It was a construction plan, organized around the specific advantages his position actually offered, rather than the disadvantages the conventional narrative had led him to focus on. His high-income years were recognized as a finite and precious window, not evidence of what had been missed before, but material for what could be built now. His clarity of preference was deployed as a filter against lifestyle inflation, rather than allowed to operate as a silent permission slip for spending more because he was earning more. His professional expertise was deliberately extended into consulting relationships that generated additional capital without proportionally extending his time obligations. The result at the end of 30 months was a financial trajectory that Norman described as fundamentally different from anything he would have predicted from outside the process. Not because anything magical had happened, but because the analysis had started from an accurate picture of his actual advantages, rather than from the conventional narrative about his disadvantages. The third advantage, the one that I believe is most systematically undervalued, and that I want to address directly before closing, is what I think of as the concentration advantage. At 50, the major financial drains that consumed capital through the middle decades are typically either resolved or substantially reduced. Children are approaching financial independence or have already reached it. The mortgage is further along. Career volatility has stabilized into a period of predictability and peak earnings. The social and lifestyle spending that calibrated itself to the peer group of early adulthood has settled into patterns that reflect genuine choice rather than performance. The result is that a larger proportion of income is, for the first time in decades, genuinely available for strategic deployment, for directed, intentional wealth building rather than for the management of competing demands. This concentration of deployable resources, arriving simultaneously with the clarity of purpose that comes from knowing what one actually wants, and the wisdom of experience that comes from having already navigated the expensive lessons, creates a combination of conditions that is not present at any other point in adult financial life. The 30-year-old has time but not resources, not clarity, and not experiential wisdom. The 65-year-old approaching retirement has wisdom and clarity, but a compressed window. The person at 52 or 54 or 58 occupies a specific moment in which all three conditions, deployable resources, clear purpose, and experiential wisdom, overlap in ways that, properly recognized and used, make serious wealth building not just possible but genuinely likely. The question I want to leave you with today is one that I ask everyone in their 50s who comes to see me, and it is a question that tends to produce useful discomfort. If you made a list of the 3 specific advantages that you have right now, at your current age, with your current experience, your current income, your current clarity of preferences, that a 35-year-old categorically does not have, what would be on that list? Not advantages you wish you had, the actual advantages that your current position genuinely confers. Write that list before the week ends. It will tell you something about the financial strategy that is actually appropriate for where you are. And it will tell you something much more useful than the standard narrative ever could.